Is this the explosive downfall of the Beckham family? Hello, you gorgeous donuts. The Beckham family is arguably one of the most famous families on the planet. They're certainly one of the most successful families to ever come out of the UK. But in the last 7 days, their eldest son, Brooklyn Beckham, has dropped an absolute bombshell on this family. And I don't think this family is ever going to be the same again, at least publicly. In this video, we're going to go through who the Beckham family are, how they created their massive empire, and how in almost a second everything was almost ripped apart, with the post of a few Instagram stories. And later in this video, we're going to have a look at somebody who has came out talking about exactly what is going on here and verifying all of the claims. So get comfy, because this one is a little bit wild. Now, David Beckham is arguably one of the most famous footballers ever, at least globally, especially when he took his brand to America. And I definitely think his brand stretches way past football. He's just famous in his own right now. He actually owns a football team, and he also does a lot of charity work for UNICEF. But in 1997, when David was still playing for Manchester United, he would meet a woman called Victoria Beckham, and they would create one of the biggest dynasties the UK has ever seen. For people that don't know, Victoria Beckham was massively successful in her own right. She was part of the global phenomenon that was the Spice Girls, and after leaving the Spice Girls, she's been very successful within the fashion world and also has a beauty brand herself. Now, they actually got introduced to each other in the Players Lounge at Manchester United, and it's reported that Victoria actually wrote her number on the back of a plane ticket to give to David so that he could call her. Now, these two would spend a lot of time together when they had time available, and this led to them getting engaged in 1998, and the announcement of this really solidified them two as arguably the most famous couple on the planet, especially in the UK. Like, the amount of spotlight that these two got was ridiculous. I definitely think it was because they were both like insanely famous in their own right, and bringing both their brands together really propelled them both into a new universe. And a year later, in 1999, they would actually have their first child called Brooklyn, who becomes very prominent later in this video. And the first thing you really notice about the Beckhams, especially when they got together, is yes, they obviously loved each other, but they definitely knew that this benefited them commercially being together. Every little thing in their life was almost made public. Like, they would go on talk shows and talk about, you know, getting pregnant with Brooklyn.
So what's he called?
Brooklyn.
All right, and how did you come up with that name?
Well, we found out that I was pregnant while I was on tour in America, and we was in Brooklyn when we found out.
So had you actually done it there?
No, we didn't do it there.
For real?
We did it in Denmark, if you really want to know.
To be fair, I would definitely have left my family if they named me after the place I was conceived in. You think I'm walking around with a name like the Garage for the rest of me life? No chance. Hopefully it wasn't the Garage, that was a joke. Well, the flat that I grew up in didn't even have a garage, so right, that's me clear. The toilet, otherwise, it did have one of those. The toilet Kirkham. That's not a great name. I just don't like the double-barreledness of it, you know. No offense to anyone that is called the toilet. But as you can see, they come off very likable, and I can understand why people were so invested in their relationship. You know, they do seem relatable to an extent. I know Victoria Beckham apparently grew up, you know, on the richer side. I think her dad had a Rolls Royce. There's that very famous clip on the Beckham documentary where David Beckham comes in and forces Victoria to kind of tell everyone that her dad drove a Rolls Royce. You've got to be insanely rich to own a Rolls Royce. That's like the top of the top. But obviously, because the Beckhams were very public, this meant that Brooklyn Beckham from a young age had a lot of kind of scrutiny and also a lot of attention driven his way. You would often see him as well on the pitch as a baby when David was playing. Victoria and David had very much agreed to kind of put him in the spotlight and kind of taken that decision away from Brooklyn. Obviously, they're his parents and it's their decision to make that. But what I'm trying to say is this kid has always had a lot of pressure from tabloids on him, and I definitely know I don't, and everyone watching probably can't relate to that or what that's like. And this meant when Brooklyn was growing up, he would have a lot of eyes on whatever he was doing. Obviously, the first thing that people thought he would do would be a footballer, and that didn't work out for him. He would then go on to have like a photography boom, and he even said in his own words, at this point, his parents really supported him.
Brooklyn publishes a book of his photography.
So supportive. I mean, my mum and dad really helped me as well with this book. So I couldn't have done it without without them. Yeah, I mean, I look up to both of them.
So obviously, at this point, you know, Brooklyn almost sees his mum and dad as his, like, heroes, you know? He's saying he looks up to them, these are the people that he's aspiring to be like. But all of that was about to change, as you're going to see later on. Now, Brooklyn would actually quit photography after this because he got a lot of hate for this book. We talk about this in length in our Nepo Baby video if you want to watch it after this one. But after this, Brooklyn would actually try his hand at being a chef.
Hey man, what do you do for a living? Your car's awesome.
Oh my god, I know you.
Yeah, Daniel Mack, you seen it? What's up, bro?
I'm a chef.
You're a chef?
Yeah.
Really? Are you like the best chef in the world?
I'm trying to be.
What's your chef name? If that's a thing.
My name's Brooklyn.
Okay, any advice to people trying to get into like cooking?
Yeah. Just follow your passion.
When you're making toast, put it on level 2, not level 3. You don't want to burn it, do you? Just a side note as well, like, Brooklyn is in a McLaren P1 there. Like, I am absolutely obsessed with cars. The McLaren P1 is, like, the greatest McLaren you can get. It's actually a part of the Holy Trinity, as it's a hypercar, which basically means it's worth over £1 million for a car. For a trainee chef, by the way. So, obviously, you know straight away that Brooklyn has been given a lot of things on a silver platter. Anything he basically wants, he can get at this point without having to actually work for it. And obviously that's going to give him some like out of touch perspective that obviously none of us kind of can understand. However, Brooklyn would also, I believe, quit being a chef and would be more of like a social media chef, just making Instagram reels basically. But one thing he has always reiterated is that everything he has tried, his parents have supported him in this, and his family as well, his siblings. But in April 2017, it wasn't just going to be Brooklyn's family that were supporting him. He would meet a girl called Nicola Peltz at Coachella, and this trip would arguably change the trajectory of his life. Now, Brooklyn and Nicola do have a lot in common. Nicola also grew up in this kind of weird luxury lifestyle. Her dad is Bully Nelson, who is one of the most famous ever Wall Street investors. So she is basically the son of a billionaire as well. Is there an app for this, by the way, like where sons and daughters can just kind of meet each other, but you've strictly got to be like the child of a billionaire? Surely there's an app out there like this. Can't imagine it's on the App Store for 59p though. I wonder on the first date if, like, you know, by law you've got to bring proof of your trust fund. Now, Nicola herself is actually an actress. She's been in movies such as Deck the Halls, Transformers, and also Avatar: The Last Airbender. However, one thing that she won't be bending for is the Beckham family. Does that work? Seems a little bit weird when I say it out loud. I promise it wasn't meant to be. I just mean like bending around, you know, not like actually, woo, you know, not that kind of bending. Otherwise, that would be weird. Now, what I actually mean by that is a lot of discontent was getting rumoured between the two families, especially Nicola and the Beckhams. One of the first insights the public got into this was at Brooklyn and Nicola's wedding in 2022. Now, there is an entire documentary on this if you want to go and watch it, but there's a couple of weird things that happened in this, which I do think some people blew out of proportion. There was one incident where Nicola allegedly refused to have Victoria Beckham design a dress. Now, obviously, Victoria Beckham is a very successful fashion designer, and, you know, it's her son getting married. However, she opted for another brand, another luxury brand to have for a wedding dress. Now, to me, I don't think this is that big of a deal. Maybe it is, but I feel like on your wedding day, you should be able to choose. It doesn't really matter if, you know, your mother-in-law is a big fashion designer. If you like the look of one wedding dress, it's your wedding, it's your choice if you can afford it. Like, there has been other scenarios where Nicola was promoting her movie Lola, where Victoria Beckham actually did design her outfit for that.
The red carpet of Nicola's directorial debut, Lola.
That meant so much to me for her just to fly in and be there with me that day. And she also made my outfit, which meant so much to me.
So to me, they seem like they're on good terms here, despite all of the noise from the press saying they're not. But hey, what do I know? What do you know? We're not the Beckhams. Unless there is one of the Beckhams watching this, which if there is, hopefully I'm, you know, doing this justice. Also, this would be weird if you were one of the Beckhams watching this. I'd just turn off. However, a year later, when the Beckhams were doing the press and red carpet for their Netflix documentary, there definitely looks like there is a little bit of a rift between Nicola and the rest of the family, and Brooklyn as well. It seems like Brooklyn and Nicola are kind of away from the rest of them. Look at this. As you can see, there's David and Victoria, and Brooklyn's trying to like hug his mom. And even Nicola just looks like she's side-eyeing her. And Brooklyn looks very uncomfortable here. He clearly says something to her. Obviously, I'm like reading into this and I could be completely wrong here. But Victoria doesn't even look at Brooklyn. You know, like if someone does this to you to like be like, oh, I'm here to get in the photo, and you kind of go, what? Chances are, you two aren't friends. It just looks like everyone's together but these two. Yeah, this just seems off. You know, it just does. Something has happened in this year span, which has created a little bit of a rift here. It seems like Brooklyn and Nicola are only here because they feel like they possibly need to be here, not by choice. But again, this is all alleged. Even Victoria's like body language here. You know, I mean, I'm not a body language expert, but she's just like turned away from them. It's almost like the photo cuts off at her. Maybe that's what she's thinking. She's like, okay, if I'm going to frame this, if I just stand like this, it's going to make it easier to chop, chop, chop behind us, you know? Now, a year later, in Christmas 2024, is the last picture of Brooklyn, Nicola, and the rest of the family, the Beckhams, together, I believe. This was posted to Brooklyn Beckham's Instagram. Now, I actually did go on Brooklyn's Instagram today to see if that photo's still up. However, it's not. The only photo from that Christmas is his time with the Nicola side of the family, which I think is very telling already, and things wouldn't get much smoother going into 2025, as in May, David Beckham was actually celebrating his 50th birthday, obviously one of the biggest birthdays that you can have, and Brooklyn and Nicola didn't actually turn up for this. The rest of the family were there, but only them two didn't go. And it was reported that the tension between the couple and the family escalated in recent months. Also, how do they get this information? Like, sources close to the family. Who is sources? Like, honestly, if I was like a really famous person and I had a really famous family and stuff was in the press going sources say, I'd be going around every single person in my life being, well, who's the sauce there? Who's the ketchup? Who's the soy amongst us? I'd be fuming, me. Sources close to the family. Who are bloody sources? But yeah, apparently David and Victoria at this point still were hoping to heal the obvious rift, it's reported. But there was other things that happened after this as well, such as David Beckham becoming Sir David Beckham and getting knighted, and all of his family were there, but Brooklyn wasn't. So very clearly, this is deep. Like this, Brooklyn clearly feels really deep about this, because even if you're kind of having a little falling out with your family, if your father was getting knighted, you probably would be like, all right, I'll turn up to this, but you know, I'll just be civil, whatever. But clearly, you know, Brooklyn feels inside of him that he's been hurt. And one thing I do want to just say is just remember that everybody featured in this video that I'm talking about is a real person. Like, this is the one thing I always promote on this channel. These are real people. Yes, they're very famous. Yes, they seem like, you know, larger than life fictional people. They're real people. They've got one arsehole and two eyes like the rest of us. So just keep that in mind, you know, just because it actually does help to kind of have a look at what everyone's perspective is in this. I know I don't need to tell my audience that, but I see so many people having their opinions online and taking the out of this, not realizing that these are just people like you, just with a hell of a lot more money and fame. Now, moving on to August 2025, not only would Brooklyn still not turn up for any family events publicly, him and Nicola would actually renew their vows, and they would renew their vows without inviting any of Brooklyn's family, so none of the Beckhams were present at this. Now, obviously, when you renew your vows, you want all of your family there to witness it. And as well, they only recently got married before this as well, so renewing your vows straight after it, clearly they kind of wanted to have that ceremony again without Brooklyn's family present for some reason. As you can see here, like the various photos from it, the top comment is, at least Victoria isn't there to ruin it this time, which you're going to see what that means very shortly. Now, a month later, in September 2025, it was actually Romeo's birthday, who is the sibling of Brooklyn, and apparently Brooklyn didn't say happy birthday to him publicly. Again, I'm just saying this for reference to the timeline. He could have said it in private. Not everything needs to be made public. But yeah, I just needed to say that because a lot of things you don't actually know. It's just the information that is presented to the public. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't actually get to see. But one thing that the public definitely got to see in full flight was Brooklyn Beckham's bombshell. And I'm not talking about the thing that he left in the toilet, apparently. That's a joke. Literally, Brooklyn would actually go to his Instagram and post on his Instagram stories about his family and the reason why there's an absolute rift. Now, I haven't actually read through these. I've kept them for on camera because I want to get my reaction on camera to see how wild they actually are. The one thing I do know is this completely took the internet by storm this week, and it is so strange for Brooklyn to put this on his Instagram story and not through the press. Clearly, Brooklyn feels at his wit's end here and feels like this is the only way to get his kind of point across without any influence at all from anybody else. Let's take a read. I have been silent for years and made every effort to keep these matters private. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself and tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed. Oh, God, do you feel that? It's a little bit of beef. Not even a little bit, it's a lot of beef. It's a bloody full cow at this point. I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life. For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family. The performative social media posts, family events, and inauthentic relationships have been a fixture of the life I was born into. Okay, Brooklyn. Well, this went south very quickly. Okay, Jesus Christ. Mayday, we're going down. Now, obviously, he's kind of just saying here that, you know, everything that the Beckhams show is for PR. Which, you know, I kind of expected a lot of the time. Like, the Beckhams are the perfect family, and no family is perfect. Of course, they're not going to put all the bad stuff out there, because a lot of influencer and celebrity families don't. So I guess it doesn't really shock us that much, but it does shock us that someone within the family is saying this. Honestly, I don't know what's coming next in these Instagram stories, so I am worried. Recently, I have seen with my own eyes, as opposed to someone else's eyes, the lengths that they go through to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people, to preserve their own facade. But I believe the truth always comes out. My parents have been trying endlessly to ruin my relationship since before my wedding, and it hasn't stopped. What? You're joking, Brooklyn? Your parents? The ones that took you into this world? The bastard! My mum cancelled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour despite how excited she was to wear her design, forcing her to urgently find a new dress weeks before our big day. I didn't know that! What? To be fair, that is actually really toxic, if so. Like, if, you know, Victoria Beckham has went, oh, I'll make a dress for you, and then suddenly she's like, actually, I won't. What are you going to do about that? That's why they call us Posh Spice, you see. Got a lot of spice in us, a lot of turmeric, a lot of garam masala in me. Weeks before our big day, my parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which would have affected me, my wife, and our future children. Very weird. You know, obviously the Beckham name has got, you know, a very strong IP, but why would they want Brooklyn to sign it away just for marrying another girl? Did they expect him to marry within the family? They were adamant on me signing before my wedding date because then the terms of the deal would be initiated. My holdout affected the payday, and they have never treated me the same since. During the wedding planning, my mum went so far as to call me evil because Nicola and I chose to include my nanny Sandra and Nicola's nonny at our table because they both didn't have their husbands. Both of our parents had their own tables equally adjacent to ours. So basically what he's saying here is they were doing the empathetic thing of, you know, putting both the grandmas on a table that, you know, they don't have their partners there. So it kind of makes them feel special for the day. And obviously Victoria Beckham thought this was evil because I don't know if she's got some sort of, you know, according to Brooklyn, some sort of main character thing going on here, some main character syndrome. Now obviously I can understand from a mother's perspective you want to be on the, you know, the top table. I understand that. But surely this day's not about you, you know, and if it makes your son happy to have, you know, his grandma there, surely, you know, you should be happy with that as well. But again, you have to understand that we don't know all perspectives here. The night before our wedding, members of my family told me that Nicola was not blood and not family. Since the moment I started standing up for myself with my family, I've received endless attacks from my parents, both privately and publicly, that were sent to the press on their orders. Okay, again, very intense. Saying attack. No, that's a very intense way to say, especially from parents. I think this is even more shocking to hear the fact it's David and Victoria Beckham, because obviously, like, from a PR standpoint, they're like the perfect people. Like, obviously they've had little things in the past, but the IP of the Beckham name is like so brand friendly, so to hear like the word attack surrounding them, it is quite shocking. Whether it's true or not, even the allegation against them, because there's not many allegations against the Beckhams at all, really. Even my brothers were sent to attack me on social media. Sorry, I'm not laughing, that's actually not funny. It's just the fact that, like, you know, the stuff of the press isn't working, so the David and Victoria are like, okay, release the hounds! Romeo, Cruz, it's your turn! Before they ultimately blocked me out of nowhere this last summer, my mum had hijacked my first dance with my wife, which had been planned weeks in advance, to a romantic love song in front of our 500 wedding guests. 500. That's how you know they're rich. Mark Anthony called me to the stage where in the schedule was planned to be my romantic dance with my wife, but instead my mum was waiting to dance with me instead. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. I have never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life. Sorry? What do you mean she danced inappropriately? What, is she just like, yeah, my anaconda don't... Anaconda, look at this, Brooklyn, right? Ooh, bet you didn't expect this, right? Your mum twerking on you. There we go. Not stopping now. Just begun. It's just begun, Brooklyn. Why do I twerk like I'm in a nursing home trying to get it on my Zimmer frame. God, guys, that was so sexy. Can you all just keep it in your pants, please, right? There's not more of that, okay? Clearly, right? 498 other people can verify this. Let's take David Beckham off that. Maybe he's 497. I don't know if Victoria Beckham was but, dancing inappropriately. And clearly, Brooklyn Beckham felt very uncomfortable here. Like, Andy said he felt humiliated. So, from his standpoint, whether you think this is real or whether you think, he's lying, he clearly felt humiliated and embarrassed. So that's something that you do need to take into account, because this is an actual human being who was writing this. And clearly, this caused him a lot of distress. We wanted to renew our vows so we could create new memories of our wedding day that brings us joy and happiness, not anxiety and embarrassment. And twerking, right? That's what it said on the invite sheet. My wife has been consistently disrespected by my family, no matter how hard we've tried to come together as one. God, Victoria really is being inappropriate. Trying to come together. Sorry, just cut that, Hannah. I'm just being daft. My mum has repeatedly invited women from my past into our lives in ways that were clearly intended to make us both uncomfortable. Victoria Beckham is seeming like a bit of an arse here in Brooklyn's eyes, Clearly he thinks nothing of her apart from her being, his mother. Clearly he feels like she's there to just kind of ruin his life. Now, despite this, we still travel to London for my dad's birthday and were rejected for a week as we waited in our hotel room trying to plan quality time with him. He refused all our attempts, unless it was at his big birthday party with 100 guests and cameras at every corner. When he finally agreed to see me, it was under the condition that Nicola wasn't invited. It was a slap in the face. Later, when my family travelled to LA, they refused to see me at all. So that's interesting, because it seems like the issue is with Nicola for some reason. And also, I don't really like that Brooklyn feels like the only time he can see David Beckham is when everyone else is seeing him. If this is true, how would that make you feel if you were Brooklyn? It would make you feel like you don't actually want to see me. You want everybody to see us together so that it makes it better for your image. I can imagine that was how it would make Brooklyn feel. Again, this is all from his perspective. I know I keep saying it, but you have to remember this. And we've done many videos on this channel, talking about, toxic boy mums and how mums hate their daughters. We've covered this in length, and like I've said, this is a person who clearly feels like they're going through the same thing, and just because they're David and Victoria Beckham's son doesn't mean that they can't still be victim to the same controlling techniques that, a normal person can be. Very important to remember that. My family values public promotion and endorsements above all else. Brand Beckham comes first. Family love is decided by how much you post on social media or how quickly you drop everything to show up and pose for a family photo op, even if it's at the expense of our professional obligations. We've gone out of our way for years to show up and support at every fashion show, every party, and every press activity to show our perfect family. But the one time my wife asked for my mum's support to save displaced dogs during LA fires, my mum refused. Victoria Beckham hates dogs. No, that actually is terrible. Like, what? Again, this is very eye-opening, because I've never thought this about the Beckham family. Obviously, now I'm seeing this in 4K. I can understand the signs of this, but I can quite easily believe that this would be the case, like a lot of the Beckham's children do post a lot on social media. They're all doing their own things, What happens within social media, and you see this with YouTube vlogging families, I didn't expect it to be the same with the Beckhams, but I guess they follow the same structure, is with their children, they want all of their children to be posting on social media because it kind of feeds into this algorithm which keeps the main channel alive, or keeps the Beckhams alive in this case. So basically, instead of just David and Victoria promoting the family, they actually have all of their children. So then it means that, the brand is harder to die because they're constantly being promoted. And if this person's a singer, if this person's an actor, this person's doing football, you're getting from all angles that promotion. And I know I'm talking about this as if it's not a family and it's a business, but clearly Brooklyn thinks that this family is a business before an actual family. The narrative that my wife controls me is completely backwards. I have been controlled by my parents for most of my life. I grew up with overwhelming anxiety. For the first time in my life since stepping away from my family, that anxiety has disappeared. I wake up every morning grateful for the life I chose and have found peace and relief. My wife and I do not want a life shaped by image, press or manipulation. All we want peace, privacy and happiness for us and our future family. So very clearly, clearly this is just Brooklyn Beckham just being like, I'm done with brand Beckham. I'm living my own life away from, you know, being a Beckham. And also, I believe he has changed his name on Instagram to like Peltz Beckham or Beckham Peltz now, which is obviously the surname of Nicola. And again, obviously reading through this for the first time, the one thing that I take away from it is this is somebody who feels really hurt, whether, you know, you agree with how he feels. The one thing that I think we can all recognize is this is somebody that is in a lot of pain. I know a lot of people might look at this and go, oh, this is just, you know, the son of a billionaire crying, and it is, you know, you're completely correct. And this person has so many luxuries and has everything they could ever want. You know, them leaving their family isn't that big of a deal because the person they're marrying also has a billionaire family. The money is never ever going to be an issue for these people. They've never had to worry about money. They never will have to worry about money. But in their lives, this will be very, very intense. And, you know, other people who don't have the money that Brooklyn, you know, has would also have been involved in a family that does feel controlling and would give you anxiety. And I can understand those emotions that he is like showcasing here. Regarding David Beckham, reporters ever since Brooklyn dropped these Instagram stories have basically been hounding him at every single thing that he's done publicly.
David, do you have a message for Brooklyn this morning?
Some of these reporters are so hilarious and just like so, I guess, like ego driven that they think David's just going to say something to them there. That they think David's just going to stop what he's doing right there and then and tell this random stranger everything. Oh yeah, I do have a message for Brooklyn. That little twat. He's just not going to say that, is he? But when he was on a panel show, he did inadvertently kind of reference it.
I've always spoke about, you know, social media and the power of social media, you know, for the good and for the bad. You know, the bad we've talked about with what kids can access these days, and it can be dangerous. But what I've found personally, you know, especially with my kids as well, use it for the right reasons. You know, I've been able to use my platform and my following, you know, for UNICEF, and it's been the biggest tool to make people aware of what's going on around the world for children. And I've tried to do the same. I've tried to do the same with my children to educate them. They make mistakes. Children are allowed to make mistakes. That's how they learn. So that's what I try to teach my kids. But you have to sometimes let them make those mistakes as well.
Now, I do find that fascinating because, you know, first thing I will say is like brand Beckham, the marketing, the PR is sublime. Like, it's unbelievable. So you have to recognize that this is, you know, this would have been constructed by PR. What to say, how to reference it. Don't say Brooklyn specifically so people don't get that thing to clip up. But reference it and know that everybody knows that you're talking about this situation. But the most interesting thing I found about that is the way that he's talking about Brooklyn kind of like he's a child. He says you've got to let children make their mistakes. Now, Brooklyn is around the same age as what I am. We would have been in the same school year. I don't know, this seems like I'm making it about me. Actually, yeah, I'm really affected by this because I would have been in the same school year as Brooklyn. It could have been me. It could have been me. I'm like one of those moms that checks in safe, you know, when there's like a hurricane across the other side of the world, yet they live in Hull. But I do think this could be associated with the controlling nature that Brooklyn is talking about. Like, if David still sees Brooklyn as a child, obviously when you have a child, you are trying to make sure that they're safe and control what they do so they don't hurt themselves because they're a child. But Brooklyn's not a child. He's an adult. He can make his own decisions. He's married, you know? This guy is a fully fledged adult. But also, I'm kind of emotionally kind of toiled in this because I really do like David Beckham, at least like the things I've seen publicly. And, you know, he's also been through a hell of a lot. Like, when he was playing, he had people like putting these dummies that were like hanging him after he got sent off for England. Like, David Beckham has been through a hell of a lot regarding mental health before mental health was even talked about. So I've always had that respect for him. So it is kind of hard to see him getting talked about in this way. But obviously throughout this video, I've kind of been very, very non-biased in that. I just want to recognize that, you know, I was a fan previous to this of David. Now, moving on to Victoria. Victoria, in my opinion, has actually been kind of using this situation a little bit to her advantage, I would say. Like, she's been relentlessly posting about her makeup brand, especially her eyeliner, and the engagement is absolutely crazy. She's getting like 5, 6, 7 times the engagement she normally would, and she's like, I'll just take advantage of this. She's also posted a picture with the Spice Girls, which again, I think is very, very clever because she's basically getting all of the fandom from the Spice Girls, you know, from back in the day on her side in a way in this feud and just kind of reminding people like, you know, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. Very clever. I know, you know, some people watching this might be going, oh, you know, she just posted that. But you have to remember everything that is getting posted right now is the PR team. You know, it's them in in survival mode, just trying to get through this. These posts are created by the most cleverest people that work in PR. They're not just deciding to post this just because they fancy it. Brooklyn Beckham isn't getting that much support from what I've seen, especially on his own posts. Like, on his last couple of Instagram posts, like, it's just loads of comments saying, you need to talk to your mum and dad, you shouldn't have posted that. So he's actually disabled comments on his newest post that he's done, which is sad to see because, you know, he has come forward about this. Whereas with Victoria Beckham, she's just getting loads of support. She's getting so much support that one of her singles, her older singles, has reached #1 on the iTunes chart. This is how unserious the UK is. This is a post from Brooklyn Beckham talking about how his mother danced inappropriately on him at his wedding day. And everyone's like, you know what? I actually rate that. I'm just gonna, like, support that woman right now. Clearly a lot of people, at least Victoria Beckham fans, are siding with Victoria Beckham over Brooklyn in this. And honestly, I just feel like people shouldn't really take sides. I feel like this shouldn't have been made public, I will say that, but clearly Brooklyn felt like he needed to do it. Now, because people are clutching at straws, one thing that everybody has asked for is who went to this wedding? Like, who was one of the 500 people that can verify these claims? Well, one person has actually stepped forward, and he was actually the DJ at the wedding. I believe he's called Fat Tony. Now, according to This Morning, allegedly, he actually wanted to come on the show, like they didn't approach him. He wanted to say his piece, which instantly I do think is a little bit odd, because why? Like, why? You know, you were the DJ. Clearly, you know, they trusted you. That's why they've got you to DJ. Why are you now spilling the secrets? Yes, it's great from an audience perspective, but already I'm a little bit apprehensive into what he's going to say here.
The reason I'm on here is because literally you can't comment, you can't, and I've been inundated. Like last night, over about 250 messages, 1,000, not 50. I wish it was 250 messages on Instagram alone of people going, "Spill the tea, spill the tea, spill the tea." You know, that's why I'm here, is to talk about the word inappropriate.
So you're trying to make this about you? Oh yeah, I've had loads of like messages. Have you? You probably had one. I don't know about you, but when this information broke, my first thought wasn't, oh, you know what I'm going to do right now? I'm going to DM Fat Tony. I need to know his opinion about this. Clearly, this guy's trying to just get something out of this, in my opinion, surely. Like, this is the only reason he's going so public with it. Very strange move.
What we deem inappropriate. Right, you're talking to probably one of the most inappropriate people in the world. If you've ever folled me on Instagram, you'll understand that.
Yeah, this guy, again, if you've ever followed me on Instagram, you know, if you want to, bro, come on.
There was no, I'm not allowed to say slut dropping, but I'm going to say it. There was no slut dropping. There was no black cat.
He's so inappropriate. What?
Right, so basically, Mark Anthony was performing on stage. He then called Brooklyn onto stage. Brooklyn went onto the stage where the next minute everyone was expecting it to be Nicola to go up and do the first dance. And then Mark Anthony asks the most beautifulest woman in the room to come to the stage. And then he says, Victoria, come to the stage. So Victoria's by the stage, she goes onto the stage. And of course, at that point...
So this Mark Anthony guy, he's the guy kind of, you know, fiddling this, right? He's the guy kind of stirring the pot here. You can't say, can the most beautifulest girl in the room come to the stage and not be talking about the bride on her wedding day? You can't do that. You can't say Victoria. Because obviously, if I was the bride, I'd be crying. I'd be like, yeah, she's beautiful, but not more than me. Not on this day. So it's Mark Anthony we should be sending the hate toward.
He literally... devastated because he thought he was going to do his first dance with his wife. Then Nicola leaves the room crying her eyes out. Brooklyn's stuck there on stage, and then they do this dance, and Mark Anthony's like, "Go, put your hands on your mother's hips," and it was a Latin, you know, it's a Latin thing, and the whole situation was really awkward for everyone in the room.
Now that makes a lot of sense in terms of the context to what Brooklyn talked about. Like I said, there's obviously a lot more strings to this bow right now, and we're only hearing it from one perspective. So very clearly, you know, there's an orchestrator behind this beef, and it seems like it's this Mark Anthony character. But I do still think if you're Victoria Beckham, you would be like, okay, I'm going to let my son have his first dance with his bride. And even, you know, seeing the bride run out of the room and cry, you know, Nicola's crying on her wedding day, surely you would be like, okay, stop what we're doing, because this is her day alongside Brooklyn's, and we're all here for them, not for anybody else. Very strange.
When the bride and the groom leave their own wedding devastated, it kind of like word trickles out, and people, yeah, again, there not many people turn up to the brunch, to say the least, but you know, it was the talk of, you know, everyone was talking about it. Everyone was talking about how sad that part of it was. But, you know, I think the whole situation was thrown in. Victoria was thrown into it.
Yeah.
And, of course, you know, I think that too much has been read into it.
So even though this guy is clearly on this show for himself, I do think he does give some context to the situation. I definitely do understand a little bit more from a broader perspective what actually went on here, but it still doesn't really change how Brooklyn feels. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think he really helped anyone there. But I would definitely like to know your thoughts on this situation, Donuts. I have tried to keep this a little bit later. Like, I didn't want to upload this straight away like I've seen a lot of other videos, because I didn't want to just put some information there and miss everything else. So I kind of wanted to let this situation breathe, especially with it being a family. So hopefully you did enjoy this full roundup, and if you want to see my video on Brooklyn Beckham and his kind of life story as a Nepo baby and all the things he's tried, click this video right here. It's really interesting. We cover them all. I'll see you over there. Bye bye.
Cam Kirkham, baby.